Hi, friends. I am joined virtually this time with filmmakers Jeff Orlowski-Yang and Sarah Keo. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you
Great to
too.
meet you.
So I'm happy to connect with you, even though it's after hot dogs here in Toronto, Canada. But your film, Chasing Time, is making its journey through film festivals across North America. So I wanted to touch base with you both about the film, but maybe let's just set folks up with regards of the work that you've been doing together. I know, Jeff, you've started in documentary with James Balog in terms of the film Chasing Ice. And then, Sarah, you've also joined in one of Jeff's other projects, The Social Dilemma. So let's talk about how you came to, maybe, Jeff, you start off with your documentary filmmaking career and then have Sarah join you.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having us, and it's great to be here. I got into film through photography. I always wanted to be a National Geographic photographer, and when I was introduced to James Balog many years ago, he was just like this idol that I wanted to work with and be close to. And it was years and years of following him around that led to my first film, Chasing Ice, that came out in 2012. And in many ways, this project is the continuation and sort of the conclusion of that story. We designed Chasing Time to be a standalone film, but it also harkens back to this legacy of work from this photographer who's been documenting changing glaciers for over 15 years now. And it's been this entire career arc for me in some ways, going to these glacial landscapes and spending all this time out there. And it was a couple of years ago when we were at a program at Sundance where we met Sarah, and I'll pass it over to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as Jeff was mentioning, I actually didn't go to film school. I didn't necessarily have a film background, but I went to business school, and there was this idea in the back of my head that I really loved storytelling, and I wanted to figure out a way to explore that as a potential career path. And so that's how I ended up working at Sundance on the artist support side of filmmaking. But I realized that, watching other people using the power of storytelling to change the world, I was like, I want to do that. So when I met Jeff and his producing partner, Larissa, at Sundance, I was telling everyone that they were the dream filmmakers I wanted to work with. I had seen Chasing Coral and their pitch for The Social Dilemma. And so, at Sundance, I connected with the two of them, and through informational interviews and voicing a desire to learn, they were gracious enough to bring me onto the team for The Social Dilemma as a production coordinator. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've been working with the team for the past 5 years, and it's just been such a great hands-on experience of learning filmmaking from this incredible team of filmmakers who have been doing it for years. And when I voiced a desire to direct, Jeff and Larissa found an opportunity for me to learn in a mentorship capacity. So Jeff was really my biggest mentor through this process of being my co-director and helping me learn the ropes of what it means to be a director.
It's such a nice way of getting into filmmaking, right? Because not everybody has access to film school, or someone like you with a business background is also not a bad thing, right? In terms of working
Yeah.
behind the scenes and in whatever capacity, right? It's always a
Mhm.
good effort. So it's nice to hear about this mentorship relationships, because that is sort of one of the big themes that we get to see in Chasing Time. Jeff, you mentioned this is sort of the end or culmination of James Balog's work in capturing the melting of the ice caps, and now kind of passing this legacy on to the next group, or maybe to some of us, as a way of call to action. So let's talk about mentorship first, and then we can get into some other parts of the film. I know for you, Jeff, there's been a really great relationship between you and Jeff that we see really nicely on film. So maybe let's talk about that.
Yeah, James has been such a teacher for me, and in some ways, he's been so hell bent on creating his imagery and creating his art, and being able to witness and watch what his process has been like has been so informative and educational. And um, there's so many things that I've learned from him over time, but really persistence and dedication, and like the dedication towards his craft is something that he's been so passionate about for all of us.
Mhm.
For me, converting that into film and carrying that through into my artistic medium, there's such a strong parallel with photography, but then it has transformed from photography into time and to using cinema. And so it's been, for me, just a beautiful opportunity to be able to work in film for all of these years and continuing it forward and bringing Sarah on. As you were pointing out, Heidi, there aren't many opportunities for people to have their first directing opportunity. Like it's sort of this sticky chicken and egg of like, you have to demonstrate that you've made a movie to prove that you can make a movie. So where do people start? It's really, really challenging. And so for this particular project, knowing Sarah's interest and knowing where we were in what we were able to do with this project, we were able to bring Sarah on as a co-director and give her that chance to launch her career through the making of this project itself. And that's something that we've been, as a team at Exposure Labs, we've been thinking about that opportunity of mentorship in film in a lot of different capacities, certainly on the producing side, and bringing people in to learn and get more exposure to the filmmaking process through the actual work of making projects.
That's so nice to hear. And Sarah, let's maybe hear about you and this relationship that you're developing or you have developed over time in terms of mentorship and what that means to you, and also kind of moving forward on this.
Yeah, on screen we do see at the end that Jeff has been mentoring me through this co-directorship, but I should mention that other members of our team at Exposure Labs have been my mentors as well, especially, Larissa Rhodes and Steve Picculal and Daniel Wright, who are on the producing side of the team. And so not only am I getting the directing mentorship, but also the producing mentorship. And as someone who did come from a background, I was low income, woman of color, I didn't necessarily have the access and resources to, as you're saying, film school or other pathways to get into filmmaking that maybe other people do. And so being a part of this team who are so willing and generous to mentor and teach and nurture has been such a transformative experience for me, and just finding my confidence as a filmmaker and figuring out what are the stories I want to tell, what is my own creative vision and voice, and knowing how successful it's been for me and getting to this point. I would love to see more of that within the film industry. I don't feel like there's enough being done to make sure that people are set up for success. It's not just enough to say, hey, like, here's funding and resources as a new first-time filmmaker. It's like you need that mentorship, you need guidance, you need people supporting you along the way because you don't know what you don't know, and just people who do have more experience and more knowledge. That is something that is really easy to do, is just take some time to mentor someone, even if it's just one phone call, if it's just spending a little time. It can make such a huge difference in someone's life.
Absolutely. And I've heard this from other up and coming filmmakers as well. And it's not just in documentary, it's in all types of filmmaking, which is a nice way to sort of talk about the story that you're sharing with us in Chasing Time, in that, we see this relationship among, I think, primarily three of you, Jeff, James, and a third person. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on their name.
So far, all good. Yeah.
Who does tremendous work as well with the photography side of things. And now I was reading in terms of Sarah, you're joining in and you're kind of another observer, and you're bringing this other perspective into the filmmaking and gathering the story from a different side, which is perhaps a more vulnerable side. So as co-directors, sort of partners in crime here, what was that discussion in terms of, the terrain is difficult to navigate in terms of landscape? We already know that James Balog has a lot of work that people know about, but what is it that you wanted to share with us that would kind of give us a different glimpse into James's world and your relationship?
Yeah.
You want to take that, Sarah? Yeah.
Sure. Going into this film, we did want it to be a different approach to this type of storytelling around climate films, and that we wanted to focus on the human behind the work rather than just the project itself. Seeing James's journey and his dedication and perseverance and his personal health journey just made him feel so much more human, because I feel like it's really easy to see these climate activists or climate leaders or people who are like, James himself being a mountaineer and adventurer, photographer, sometimes it's really easy as an audience member to feel like, oh, they have something special or they're like,
Mhm.
unique. And I can't do that too. But by seeing the more human side of this story of his personal life and his vulnerability, that was what we were interested in showing, because then audiences would recognize that no matter who you are, no matter what your background, skill set, job, whatever it may be, you have something to contribute. James contributed his photography. He was
Right.
a photography first before he was a climate activist. And Jeff is a filmmaker. And so, that I felt like was part of the role that I played of interviewing and observing and witnessing these dynamics among these three men who have had a decades-long relationship, and wanting to show that more vulnerable emotional side, and that it's okay to cry on camera, and it's okay to be open about your emotions and the relationships that are so meaningful to you. Because if we can see more of ourselves in this type of work, the more we feel empowered to join in on the movement.
Mhm. Were there moments where you were taken by surprise, Jeff, in terms of what made it onto the final cut, or anything that sort of stood out in terms of this is something that definitely needs to be part of this final?
I'm glad the really ugly crying didn't make it into the final cut. So like that's I feel grateful for that. But from the beginning, we knew that my story would likely play some role in the actual film itself, in a way that I really wanted to defer to Sarah and our producing team and our editing team around like how my life experience was portrayed here. And so
Mhm.
it's something I really wanted to defer to everybody else, in terms of like, I obviously can't be objective about how I come across. Um, so a lot of it was interesting, wearing multiple hats. Like when we were out in the field, I was filming, but then also sort of setting up my own interview. And
Right.
then Sarah and our additional camera team, Dave and others, would be behind the camera for my interview, and then just participating in the conversation as, I'm just here to answer all the questions, and whatever you guys want to ask me, it's all fair game. And so it's sort of, it was an interesting parallel and push and pull between like trying to capture um and be filmed at the same time in
Yeah.
some ways. That was a new experience. But at the same time, I think we were also aligned on what the opportunity was here and what we were trying to say, that it all just felt natural. And it was all like, we're
Mhm.
trying to capture all of the stuff that we collectively as a team are doing. And there is a story here of people trying to use their skills and tools to raise awareness,
Right.
and capturing us with the cameras was the story that we needed to document.
Mhm.
And I do feel, I think to that note, um, I normally don't think about legacy, for myself, certainly not. But when thinking about James and James's legacy and this team and this effort that has gone on for over 17 years now of documenting glaciers all around the world,
Yes.
I am proud that we're able to put this film out that is a testament to what this team has done to raise awareness about the visual evidence of climate change. Like, these glaciers, these landscapes have been changing nonstop under our eyes, and we don't get to see it.
Yeah.
And it's the work of this team that's been able to put that into a film format, and to be able to show the world, hey, look, this is what's actually happening. This is what humans are causing. This is a historical record of what's happening right now. And it's up to the public to decide what we're going to do about it.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's also the impact of this film. I mean, I've seen your other films, so I'm familiar with that work and James's work, but I found it to be so incredibly moving to watch. And it's
Mm,
a long film,
yeah.
really accessible in a lot of ways. So I
Yeah.
really
Thank you.
appreciate the tone of the film. And there are moments where you just allow us to sit with all of it, which is feelings and views, because we look at the
Yeah.
landscape, for example, and we look at how tourists are interacting on site. And then, of course, moments where James and the rest of the team are interacting. So I do think that it really is a way. There's always a thing about having a personal touch in these types of films that I think
Yeah.
can kind of bring the audience in. Um, in a different way.
Yeah.
Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to thank you for that. I thought it was really, well done. So congratulations to the production team. I do wanted to, I'm mindful of time, but I wanted to just talk about James and how, he's such a go-getter the entire time that we've gotten to through his work, and he's just not immune to time, right? Like in terms of how time run out. What was that? What was his thought on the final film? Because I missed it at, I don't know if he was here in Toronto, but I'm curious to know what his feedback has been to the group.
Yeah. Do you want to start, Sarah? Do you want me to start?
You can start.
The first time we shared the cut with him, I mean, he was incredibly touched and moved, and he watched it with his wife, and like we could see the tears at different times, and I think he sees it as both a testament and as a personal thank you from me and from our team in recognizing and honoring the work. And I think more than anything, we're about to go to Seattle and then Mountain Film as well, and being able to showcase the film together. I think he's just really proud of what we as a team have been able to accomplish and put together. I don't know if that gets to your question, but maybe Sarah, you can add more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as Jeff was insinuating, like that when we talked about this film, we really framed it as a love letter from Jeff to his mentor, James.
Right.
And that really was the foundation of how we created this story arc, was making sure that love and that, care came through, because that ultimately is the message that we want to come out of the film, is how important mentorship is in helping shape individuals, but also future generations to be able to do this work and continue this type of work. And that, at the end of the film, we do have this relay race line that Jeff shared around, this climate work not being a sprint nor a marathon, but a relay race, and that we pass on the baton to future generations. I think I've missed a part of the line of that we all, run our leg and do the work, and then we pass on the baton. And so this idea really helped us, think about what we want people to take away from the film at the end. And, it's really amazing to see this legacy of James's work and him passing on this baton of work to Jeff. And at the end of the film, it's not necessarily passing it off to an individual, but passing it off to the public. Like, it is inviting everyone to come join in on this work and the movement, and that we're all in this together and building a better future.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I also listened to another interview you did where we're talking about how this is a meditation on lifetime, all kinds of things. And as you keep talking about the film, because you're traveling with the film, what are some of the takeaways that you have in terms of maybe taking some of these lessons or takeaways into your next projects and what you're going to be doing in the future?
I could jump in, Sarah, first if you'd like. Or,
yeah. Go ahead.
I think chasing time is really exemplative of where my headspace is at more broadly right now. Around, we are facing a crisis around how we relate to nature and how we engage with this natural environment that we are dependent on as a civilization, and yet we have been operating so selfishly with relationship to it. And we need to be taking our time, and we need to be rethinking the way we relate to the natural world and the way we relate to each other. And so for me, that theme is something that's present in all of the projects and all of the work that my headspace has been around. Right. And in some ways, it's even to the level of like, how do we decolonize the filmmaking process itself? How do we shed the false senses of urgency, or how do we envision a better way of working within the film industry, which is so broken and extractive, like so many industries are. And so using the process of filmmaking itself as being an attempt towards moving towards the healing that I think we need more broadly and more globally.
Excellent. What about Sarah?
Yeah, being able to watch the film with audiences has been such a rewarding experience. Just hearing people sniffling or crying at the moments that we really wanted to be emotional. And so, uh, it helps reinforce my interest in storytelling of the human experience and, the recognizing that time is limited and we have to do something now, the urgency of wanting to share these stories to
Mhm.
be able to inspire and mobilize people. And sometimes the best way to do that is getting people to cry and reaching them in their hearts and their souls. And so those are the types of stories that I'm most interested in, are the ones that stay with you and that make you want to do something with it. And so that's why impact in documentary storytelling, I think, is such a cool field, because it's not just limiting the work to just the film itself, but the work beyond it too. And yeah, I just really have been really grateful for the response and just all this work that's been done to get us to this point.
Absolutely. And I thank you both for bringing this story to us. I think it's going to take off, and I appreciate your comments, Jeff, in terms of the filmmaking process and how it can be improved upon, and getting stories told from these particular points of view that each of you bring. I think is where is more needed, especially around documentary filmmaking. So congratulations again. I'm gonna end on this note, and thank you so much for your time. And again,
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you so much.
thanks again.